Hey movie junkies, welcome back to Twin Flicks, where we're always celebrating the magic of art and cinema with you. And if you haven't yet, consider hitting that subscribe button and help this channel grow. So last month we sat down with film and TV and Emmy nominated editor Byron Smith. We talked about what fascinated him with editing, why he chose that as his career in film. We talked about his prolific career working on such acclaimed shows as Netflix's House of Cards, Mindhunter, HBO's True Detective, Alter Carbon, Power, and many others. He shared a wealth of knowledge, and we just had a blast catching up with Byron. So without further ado, here is our conversation with Byron Smith. Doing them good today?
Yeah, I'm doing okay. I'm doing all right.
Good.
Yeah.
Good. So as growing up, did you grow up in California? Were you born and raised in California, or?
No, I moved. Like most people, I grew up in Missouri.
Okay.
But I hightailed it out of there. And I came to LA for the first time. I didn't know anyone. I moved in one move to attend the American Film Institute after an undergraduate degree. I came out and I attended AFI, and I got a master's degree from that. But I didn't know anything about LA. I didn't know anyone.
Yeah.
Really. I had a couple of acquaintances that I made and tried to meet a few people when I came out, but I drove myself out. I packed as much as I could into my truck, and I came out and kind of was planning on spending my first night to just sleep in my truck. Uh, I didn't know anything about where to go, where to stay, and I saw an apartment, and the landlord told me, he asked me where I was staying. I could only find his apartment that was available. I told him that I was going to sleep in my car, and he said, "No, you're not. You can't do that." And he offered me to sleep by his pool. So in my
Like a
first
pool
night,
house?
not his pool house. No, I was on a Shea lounge, beside the pool.
Wow.
My first night in LA was still outside.
Oh, wow. How long ago was this?
August of 2000. It was a few months before AFI began.
Mm-hmm.
I tried to find another place. Ultimately, I took the room that he had available.
Yeah. Yeah. We're from the Portland, Vancouver area, Portland, Oregon, Washington. We moved to Simi Valley, California. And so that's, we've always been interested in filmmaking. And so when we finally got to move there, we were like, yay, we're in it. And we got, communicating with people, knowing people, and got into the indie film industry, and did a couple things here and there. Yeah, it's a crazy place to live. You really need to know people before you get there.
Yeah, it really helps.
Yeah.
It's like most people that come out a few times before they dive in, but I kind of I jumped in the deep side of the pool.
Growing up, did you guys watch many movies and you're growing up as a family? Did you guys have a movie night or favorite TV show or something you guys all watched together?
Well, growing up, movies were just about the only thing to do in the town that I grew up in. So that's why it was really attractive to me. It was really inspiring. It was really captivating.
Yeah.
Going to the movies, going to the cinema, going to theater, I would spend my summer in high school going multiple times and seeing movies over and over, whatever was playing in town. And we didn't really have there was no art scene in Springfield, Missouri, where I grew up at the time.
Mhm.
Did they have like the brand name movies coming out, or did they have indie films, or just plain old movies? What kind of movies did they have at that theater?
It was usually the mainstream summer tentpole movies, studio pictures that were coming to town. That was about all. It was really nice. I mean, before that, when I was much younger, there were some drive-ins, and that was a good way to beat the heat. You know, I have some faint memories of a few drive-ins and an interesting experience.
Yeah.
That I know some people share. People have those.
Yeah, you know, recently with COVID-19 and stuff, some of the drive-ins have reopened.
I mean, back in those drive-in days, I mean, I remember that's how I saw E.T. And that was really magical. It was inspiring. And then my dad really liked Romancing the Stone. I remember going to that one more than once. There wasn't on, and that was really young. When I was watching movies, what inspired me more was I was deconstructing what I was seeing, and I realized there's something more going on than just filming, and there's a lot of creativity. I really thought that editing must be where the creative force is really, really coming from. So that drove me to be editing. That's what I wanted to do, because I could tell that it was being constructed, that it was being crafted.
Yeah.
That it was a combination of everything. And I really was drawn to how the editor seemed like the real ambassador to the audience, that really cared about story, and trying to complete a movie.
I remember, we were the same way growing up, and when we got into laser discs, and we were like, audio commentary, what's that? When they first appeared on Laserdisc, and so we watched them. We're like, whoa, they're talking about how they actually made the movie. You said that editing was that your first choice that you wanted to do in the film industry, or did you think of maybe doing something else?
No, I really came out to be an editor from the get-go. That's what that's all I wanted to do. That's what I really thought that was a good way to make an impact creatively.
Yeah, that's really interesting, because other people we've talked to, whether it be DPs or writers, Brandon Braga, he said that he originally wanted to be an actor because he thought actors had all the control and wrote all the lines and directed and everything. He didn't know that there was a whole other slew of people that had to do their job. And then it kind of fell into place, whether it be writer, director, and editor and stuff. So you knew instantly what you wanted that's what you wanted to pursue.
When I started to go to AFI and I applied to just the editing program, there's a student competition in the American Cinema Editors, and I really thought that society, the group of the professional, the good, the really talented editors were invited to the ACE, and I found out about the student competition, and I came to town and I thought, I want to win that. I was really motivated. I was really driven. When I moved into town, I was thinking about it already. I was kind of thinking about it as if it were a national sports championship. And my first year, I'd only been in school for a few days, really, when the entries opened for that, where we all cut the same dailies. And so I really hadn't been in graduate school yet, but I entered and I really wanted to win it. I worked hard, and then I did that year, which was really, I was really surprised. And I did not know how big the Ace Eddies were. Yeah. They are impressive, massive.
It is.
award.
It is. Yeah,
And
yeah. Most people don't know that. Most people, not only do they not know how important an editor is, but they don't know what a class on it in its own, and they have their own guild. It's just fascinating. Did you have the know-how? Did you ever like work on home movies, editing, or?
Well, the funny thing about that student award, it was the last year that it was done on film still. So I didn't cut it on film. We had it telecinied. We had it transferred from 16 millimeter to the Avid. That's what everyone was doing. All the entries were doing it that way. We cut it and then we conformed it. We got an EDL that was spit out of the Avid. And then I conformed the 16 millimeter. That was also my first time ever touching physical film. Then I conformed it myself. Then we did an output of the sound and I sunk it together. I sunk the mag to the film. And then I handed these two little 16 millimeter reels for the scene that I had cut. I turned that into the American Cinema Editor's office. And I think that they're now, I think they're submitted digitally, of course.
Yeah.
And that was the last year that it was given to you on film. And I won in the same room where the Eddies are still presented every year now, at the Beverly Hilton Hotel. It's the same place when you watch the Emmys on every year, or when you watch the Golden Globes. Those rooms where those awards are held, our awards ceremony is held there. And it's a really fantastic night that the where the Eddies are put on. It is one of the oldest award ceremonies in town. After the Oscars, it was pretty much, there was the second guild to have their own award ceremony was the Editors. So I won this award, and I didn't really know who was going to be there, and I didn't know it was going to be as large as it was. But that night, it was funny because I went back to, that night I won the award in front of Steven Spielberg and Robert Zemeckis and a slew. Kathleen Kennedy. Heavy night.
Wow.
Yeah. And then I went back to the campus at the American Film Institute, and people started hearing that I had won. And then they heard that I had accepted an award in front of Steven Spielberg, and they were like, that doesn't happen.
Did you get to talk? Did you get to talk to them, or did they congratulate you or anything?
Well, no. You know what actually happened? Who came up to me? I didn't try to press through the. Was oh my gosh, I'm actually. It was Dee Dee Allen came up to me.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, Dee Dee Allen
Yeah.
came up to me, at the end of the night, and she said, "I'm really impressed with you," and she said, "Congratulations," and I was just like, "Whoa!" And some few things have like that happened since then. It's all been downhill from there.
Yeah. It's like, what do you say to these people? Tongue-tied. Yeah.
I know. These people were like, "Hey, they introduced me, this kind of like a crowd kind of parted, and like they said, Dee Dee Allen would like to meet you, and she like stepped forward, it was really a neat moment. So, and that, so.
Yeah, that's awesome. And then you did some short films before landing some TV gigs. Was that all done digitally as well?
No, some of those were filmed. Some were on 35 and some dailies. Those were at AFI. Those shorts that I did were for my schoolwork at
okay.
AFI. And then I had a friend who was working on the first season of The Bachelor, a reality show.
Yeah.
When reality television was starting out, and while we were kind of at school, he was kind of moonlighting a little bit, and he needed to give up. He needed to go to school. He needed to do a project, and he started passing the job around. We started passing the job amongst the few of us there. And his name is Alex Katz, and now he's a massive producer.
Yeah.
In reality programming in town, and so he got me my first job.
Wow.
Well,
that's great.
Yeah. So I did that for about a month.
Yeah. So I wanted to ask, that with now everything's pretty much digital now, is there, or how do you find a difference between, or which one is more challenging, I should say, between editing film, physical film, or digital editing?
It's not really the format that makes it harder, but all these other conveniences, all these other improvements and advancements in editing that have come up with digital have made it, so much more challenging. Now we're not just cutting picture. I'm doing so much, and I mean, like, even when I started, we were doing sound, we were putting in music, I'm choosing music, I'm cutting music, but now I'm changing picture all the time. And when I say I'm changing picture, I'm actually like reframing. I'm acting more like a cinematographer in a sense. We are reframing. We are trying to improve the cinematography. We are, stabilizing shots. We are giving more form to the shot. We're giving more artisticness. We're trying to help enhance the cinematography, not just with lighting or graphics or visual effects, but we're not limited to that. We sometimes do that, but I mean, sometimes we do split screens for continuity. We just do a lot of things that they couldn't quite do when they ran out of time on set, which happens a lot in television. You're always running out.
You're talking about helping out with the cinematography. Do you work closely with the DP of a particular project, or does he just send you notes, or do you do?
He or she, no. I just try to take what they gave me and I run with it. It's a really complex thing, what I do to help enhance the cinematography. It's a really complex thing, and it's a very delicate thing. It's a very powerful tool, but while you're kind of keeping in mind what they did, you try to just make it better. Sometimes I'm trying to match shots so that the eye trace follows from one shot to the next. I mean, that's a simple form, but then I'm also trying to, when the lens ran out, when they couldn't get any closer, but we want to get a little closer. But not only that, sometimes I sometimes want to get wider, and then I'll try to extend the set. I will, what can we do here? I bring options to the table, and now that I've got a lot of experience, I'm just someone who can be like, what more can we do? Oh, maybe we don't want to do this, but maybe we want to do that. After working with people, like David Fincher, gave me a lot of experience to see what I can do to push the story and to enhance it with the framing. So there's quite a bit going on that you never see, that you never know. It happens behind closed doors. And during, this pandemic, I'm doing I'm cutting a Netflix series in my garage. That gets hot in the middle of the day, summer, and in the morning. I sometimes get up really early, and it's a little chilly out there. And because I have to get online, and I'm video conferencing with producers, my director in London, producers that are all over the world, here in LA, not only here in LA, but other countries as well. So and sometimes I get on there with my composer, and I work with him on, what we can do. And there's within the digital world, we've got a lot of tools, but it puts a lot of pressure on editors now, more than ever before. And editors, we have our fingers in everything now. And I know it's coming next. And I really think I'm bracing myself for it, but then I know it's coming, and I'm kind of like looking forward to some of the more improvements, because because sometimes that way, you know, I'm quite frankly, I'm helping actors, you know, look better, do their job better, helping them get more work. I mean, I know that you asked me if I have, you know, if I ever had aspirations about doing other things. I actually started going to acting classes. A lot later, I started going to acting classes, not to become an actor, but I wanted to be a better filmmaker. So I got into a studio really close to my house in my neighborhood, and it was a really good studio. I got a recommendation. I went in and I approached it kind of as an actor, but I saw it was my first chance of seeing what actors go through. And when I got into that studio, I started seeing and recognizing people that I've edited. And that's what was so neat about the studio. It was Jocelyn Jones's studio, and it takes place down on Santa Monica Boulevard.
Yeah.
Still, you know, now she was fascinating, and she only would she's really competitive, she's really rigid and strict about who is in her studio, and I didn't realize it until I was there, when I wouldn't recognize some of the actors until they were getting a critique from her. Even you know, I wouldn't recognize them out of makeup, or I wouldn't recognize them in the seat beside me. And they would put on a scene, and then they would sit down and kind of like, they would lower their guard a little bit, and they'd be taking some criticism from her. And it was from their real emotions that I recognized a couple of them. I was like, oh, right on. Oh, wow, I've killed that guy in a scene before. Or,
That's great.
I'm serious. Yeah. And then sometimes they put on scenes that I'm like, oh, I cut this scene.
Oh wow.
You know? They would put on a scene, and I'm like, yeah, I cut that. Yeah. You know, I mean, like I did that a few years ago, or maybe or actors would come and go in and out because they'd be working. Everybody in her studio were actors that worked. And if they weren't getting work, some of them, she would kick them out. She would show them the door. They'd have to leave the studio, but others would take leaves of absence because they're shooting in Canada on a series or something, and then they would come back, and I would be like, "That's you are," and I'd be like, "Who are you? I know you," or I would think that I know them intimately.
Yeah.
And then I would just be like, "Oh, you're that doctor." And then it's funny because I'm like, yeah, that was funny with that. You know, you had that prop that was a mess, huh? Yeah, or something. You know.
Yeah.
But it actually doing that, it made me a lot better editor. Going to acting classes gave me a new layer. And then when I started, and that kind of happened about the time that I started to work on House of Cards, and then some of the performances that I was getting at House of Cards and some of the guest stars on that show, I realized how hard they were working. And it got me to a new level of knowing where the actor was, and if the actor needed, maybe they needed another take, or maybe I should take a look at those earlier takes, because I would understand their first impression.
Yeah, new appreciation.
Yeah, it gave me a whole new set of tools.
Yeah,
and I'm still carrying those with me, all the time. And now, when I'm talking to, because now sometimes there's a lot of actors out there that are now my director. Some of these actors, like when I work with Robin Wright on House of Cards, then I talk to her kind of like an actor or on that level.
Mm-hmm.
Or we're kind of like bridging those gaps between jobs, between producer, between director or actor. And so it's kind of like things are a little more open. There's a lot more creativity. It makes things a lot easier. So, and it's not just them. I mean, like, frankly, right now, the Netflix series I'm cutting, you know, one of the producers is the lead. And so I'm working with him, you know, and
Can you tell us about, can you tell us what that new show is, or?
Early, I don't know if I should, but
Okay.
um,
That's okay.
and especially I want to. I mean, like, it's, you can kind of find it on the internet, not that hard. But
Okay.
I don't know what I, you know, it's a really, we're trying to finish the show. We had to stop. I was in Israel, on location cutting, and we didn't get done. And now the pandemic began, and we had to evacuate out of there. And we don't know when we're going to finish. We've still got a little bit to go. So there's a lot of shrugging going on, and there's some things that are still up in the air.
Sure. How much time do you spend on set, on a location, during movies or TV shows that you're working on?
I try to go to set as much as I can. I try to visit whenever I can. It happens less and less because less is being shot in Los Angeles at the moment. And we're frequently cutting here. So, but when going to set is so valuable because you see how things were modulating, you see what kind of efforts were going on. I watch the director and I can get a sense of what they're trying for. And then I can just bring that easier. I can, it makes my job easier to go treasure hunting in the dailies and go straight for something.
Yeah, I want to talk more about the collaboration with the, you need to know what the director wants. And like pretty much, I don't know if this is the right term to use, but an editor has a lot of power on what should and should not be done.
Oh yeah.
Have you ever had a director that just sternly said, no, I want it this way, like this, even if yours might be better, they still want to do it all the time?
Yeah, all the time directors will, because when I'm working in television, I'm not just working with the director, I'm working with the producers too. So I need to think ahead, and I need to think about the studio even beyond that. So I am trying to construct something that is going to remain there on down the line. And what I find often, the directors maybe don't always believe in the producer's vision or the producer's creation, because the producers are thinking about the project as a series as a whole. And the directors sometimes want to go their own direction. And maybe if they're not the same director, they aren't always on the same boat. And so you try to just do the best you can, in respect to them, so that everybody is going to look good. Everybody's going to come together, unified.
Yeah, it must be. I mean, especially TV shows these days. I mean, they're pretty much 6-hour, 10-hour movies. And of course, each episode, or most episodes, they have a different director, a different writer, a different editor. How do you keep the same pace as an editor from the previous shows or the shows that are going to be coming? Because you have to kind of keep it at a same pace. You don't want to like have your episode be something completely different than what was shown previous. How challenging is that to, I mean, I'm sure you have to talk with the other editors and to get that pacing. And
the other editors will, around the coffee maker, we'll talk about how things are going, what looked well, what looked good. Editors are usually in the same boat. We're always on the same team. We gel really well, but also we don't have to, at the same time, once you've been in the world for a little bit, you don't have to say much to each other, or you can kind of cut to the meat.
I don't know, in my mind, it seems difficult because you want to put your own touch on something, but then your own touch might be something totally radical than someone else's. And so you kind of need to be reserved not to screw up the show or your episode from the combining episodes. It's a complex in my mind.
They, often enough, they are looking for something new, and they'll watch it, and frankly, it happens more often than not that
They're more open to hearing your suggestions than saying do it straight line.
it's kind of a collaborative thing. I'm always like listening first, and I'm always delivering first. It is more when I think that things are going poorly and not I'm playing well that I may think outside the box, or I just have some ideas, lined up. But we always give the script, the first script, it's due, and we really, really put it through the ringer and make sure that you're right if we want to, diverge too much, which it doesn't have to happen too often. You just have to be good at craftsmanship, at being able to be respectful to those writers, and to get there as polished and as nice as you can. But then they are really, really happy when you have an idea.
That's good.
If you find yourself in a corner.
Yeah. Yeah. Are you given just a pilot at first, a script of the pilot, or are you given the whole season at one time?
It started out where we would get the pilot script, and we wouldn't not know much more than that. But now in this serial world, in this new golden age of episodic, when I get a phone call about a project, they often email me 5 or 6 scripts, so I've got a lot of homework to do to get ready.
Yeah.
There will be deeper into the writer's room on that side, so that they will have a pretty serious idea about where they're going to end as well. And sometimes, when I took the first House of Cards season and that job, I was given the first 10 episodes to read. It was really immersive. It was really, really great. And now that happens a lot more often now. And just like you said, like seasons are more like 8 or 9 hour movies. And that's exactly what Fincher was doing with that first season, because the whole idea, because House of Cards was the first idea to, drop the whole season to be binge watched and be available. So during the season, we were approaching it that way too, and we were watching episode back to back. And then when we did it again with Mindhunter in the first season of Mindhunter, there were several days where we spent 10 hours in the editing room binge watching it ourselves as a complete movie. And those were long days. We were really,
I can imagine.
Yeah. So, having to, taking, a pit stop and eat lunch, while we're watching, over the edit, and to try to see where we are. That doesn't always happen, but that's definitely the approach.
Yeah. Yeah. You worked on House of Cards and then Mindhunter, which both by David Fincher, but they're also pretty vastly different. One is about serial killers and the minds of the detectives and how the whole serial killer profiling worked out. House of Cards is more political based and so forth. And then you also did work on the Netflix show. I had it right in my mind.
Altered Carbon?
Altered Carbon, that's it. Yeah, so you had science fiction in there as well, action science fiction. Is it more Or how different, do you have to have a different layout on how to edit different shows from political, drama, action, sci-fi, or is it pretty much the same thing?
It's really, well, it's funny. I don't know. Some people might say that House of Cards and Mindhunter are both shows about serial
Well,
killers.
yeah.
Um, I'm really lucky that I'm kind of able to do everything. I've got a really diverse resume of different styles, everything from comedy to science fiction, action, and you. I've dabbled in all of them, but not only are they different from genre to genre, no two projects are the same either, even if they look, you know, familiar or close to one another. Yeah, you know, if you're doing a heavy drama, maybe like Mindhunter or True Detective, or I'm trying to think of other good comparisons. You know, inside the editing room, shows have very different environments with different creatives and, you know, different sets of editors. Altered Carbon, for instance, you know, that was a really visual effects heavy, massive. It's a lot of heavy lifting, a lot of visual effects, and a lot of work to do. So there were a lot of editors. There was a big rotation, a big merry-go-round. I mean, I don't know how many people we had in there eventually, but there were quite a few different editors that came around that cutting. Because, you know, I mean, it's kind of like if you worked on Marco Polo, where an editor was hired just for one episode because it was going to be such a massive project. That there are plenty of those types of projects going around. You know, Altered Carbon was certainly that way. That it was just like each episode was almost like a movie. I mean, like a movie amount of work.
Yeah.
In each episode.
How close do you work with the effects department or the music and the sound? Do you collaborate with them closely, or?
Oh yeah, I mean, in Altered Carbon, they were steps away, right down the hall. A whole department moved in, and not all of them were artists, but the coordinators, the supervisors, we were really, really closely connected. And even in House of Cards too, you know, because House of Cards is full of visual effects, and we had Christopher Dolgaris and Chad Peter that were just down the hallway. And while I was cutting scenes, I would have them take a look at some of my early cuts, and I'd be like, how can we stabilize this? How can we clean this up? You know, should we do this? So, I mean, at the ground level, sometimes we're doing visual effects that were really close to how it ended up. So, but on Altered Carbon, with all the green screen, with some of the things they were creating, I was editing for a long time on that, because we would sometimes change the duration of a lot of shots. And this is pretty common actually, where you need to change the pacing because of how the visual effect develops, you know, much later after they've been working on it for a long time, and you're like, this should be shorter, or oh, this should be different, or oh, this little prop that we've created and we designed it in something that goes in their eye, how does that look? And we talk about it forever, and then, or if there's a 3D printer of a character, you know, some of those things change. A lot of those things can change. And, you know, the other editor on Altered Carbon had a big in that, Glenn Garland, a friend of mine, there was a lot of things happening, all the way to the end. It wasn't easy.
Mhm.
There was always something moving. There were always moving parts.
Sure. Yeah. I always found it interesting how you can spend hours on one particular scene, and then when you see it, it only lasts for like 5-10 seconds. But those 5-10 seconds really do have an impact on the viewer when they're watching the show. Music and the sound, of course, is incredibly important. Do you have how do you move around with the music and sound? I'm sure that the video is all edited first before the sound department comes in. Do you have any input, like maybe song should go here rather than here, or move around, just like you would editing a scene? Maybe you would want one scene here, another scene here. Do you do that also with music and the sound?
With the music, there's a lot of about facing, or a complete 180 in a completely new direction. And, there's a lot of times where we may need to scrap an idea completely and start over, or just to investigate what would it be like. And even when I get some notes that I don't want to necessarily think that I want to do, I will do them as an exercise, and then we realize what's good and what's bad and what maybe we adjust. So, I mean, a lot of editors, we, all do a lot of sound design, and we do a lot of that groundwork. We lay that groundwork with music. And there's a lot of times that we go back and square one and, kind of like rip everything out and start over. It's a tremendous amount of work. Yeah, the editors have a huge effect.
Yeah. You were talking about earlier how working with actors, and you try to make the actors look better. How do you decide which take is the one to use? Because you hear that, I know Fincher has a reputation of taking numerous different takes, some up to 50 times or more. How do you sit down and decide, okay, this is the take we want?
Well, Fincher he's got his own process. I know what he's up to, when he does that. He's got his own approach with the actors, that sometimes ends up wearing them, or forcing them to dig deeper. And he's able to see it on set. And then when I'm watching it, I am not always just like picking the singular best take. I'm looking at pieces of how I can construct a performance, or if the performance is sound, then we can say that take is the right one that we're going to use from beginning to end. It is just respecting the performance and respecting the work the actors are doing, and seeing what they're bringing to the table, and seeing how prepared they are, and how well they were invested in making that line themselves. And I've learned a lot of tics, or looks, or a tell. I've started to see a tell when an actor doesn't know what this meant, when a line meant, and it's not always their fault. Sometimes the director doesn't know either.
Sure.
And so you notice those tricks, and when you can, when you need to give the editor, the actor, a little help, or if not, if everything is just fine. And so, because sometimes you do take syllables, or you take other performances. Sometimes you take performances that aren't even on camera. I often find a performance. I will look for the performance that we need, and I'll find it, and it's off camera, and then I'll try to put it in their mouth, so that them.
Yeah.
saying.
Or you might see something that the director didn't see on that day, but you're looking over the dailies and you see the actor doing something that would enhance that scene.
Yeah, that's the editor's job, you know, going back to helping the producers make the best version of
Yeah.
their script.
Okay, you're also a finishing producer. Can you tell us what, for those who don't know, what that all entails?
It's just seeing it through to the end. A lot of the time, I've adapted to work with a lot of composers. So many times they ask me to, you know, help the composers, you know, create something for the scenes or for the show.
Mm-hmm.
And so sometimes I'll get in with the composers or with the music supervisor to find a great song that we'll be able to afford, and that is going to really make a scene or an episode sing. And then I go to the color grading, which is when we finish the picture, we go back to the raw material, and we use another system, and we go in and we tweak the brightness and the color, and we have a huge array of tools in there now to you know, help the audience watch the show and know and help guide the audience where they may want to watch and where it's going to make it more of an impact. So we may bring out a detail or an actor, and we use color grading,
Mm-hmm.
you know, to our advantage in that way. And so that's another set of tools that I help determine after we finished. They rely on me a lot of the times, like, when do we need a visual effect, or when are we okay? And, you know, can we get by with this in the color grade? Or maybe if we think that we're going to have 16 visual effects shots, and if you have a certain number that's going to be really expensive, then maybe I'm like, you know what, we probably can do this with only 9 or less, and I'll try to re-edit that and make it less expensive. And I work with the visual effects supervisors sometimes too. I'm like, I'll help them, you know, like, you know, let's do this visual effect, since we're already, maybe if we're already in there doing a visual effect, maybe, you know what, since we're already on this shot, let's do something else. Sure. As well, push it forward. And a lot of the times, it just takes a lot of, you know, weight off the producer's shoulders. So you know, sometimes when I work as a producer that way, that, you know, that's what they're asking me to help out with.
Okay.
So
yeah, we have one of our best friends, Tyler Haas. He started out as a colorist. He went into more editing, post-production work. He worked with Ty West. He worked on Superman Returns, and then some smaller budget movies. And he was expressing pretty much the exact same thing. You know, he uses DaVinci for coloring. I guess now DaVinci is now more mainstream for editing as well. He loves DaVinci. What kind of equipment or software do you prefer?
It's getting harder and harder to find a bad piece of software than to pinpoint and say one's the best, because there, you know, a lot of software has come a long way, and it is really exciting. Actually, you know, in particular, in color, in grading.
Yeah.
It is a lot. It can get kind of be fun to harness those tools. I really like seeing what's going on, and I love it when companies talk to me about new things. I mean, like, it doesn't really matter. Like, a lot of software now is really powerful, and it's just a little extra for me that I've got to do my homework, and I've got to keep up with what's changing.
Sure.
Cameras You know, and it starts with the camera. You know, or sometimes the camera isn't quite there yet, or we're creating the technology for a project.
Yeah. I don't know. Don't remember if like House of Cards, Mindhunter, were they shot digital or were they shot on film?
Those were shot completely digitally, and they were shot on the red. They were shot on the red camera, and we were actually like they were developing new versions of the red camera.
Okay.
For each season of House of Cards and for the other movies that were happening, and like Gone Girl, and then when Mindhunter, you know, we're using that, you know, when these bigger, cooler cameras also brought extra weight onto post, because then we had massive files and we were trying to manage that stuff. But I tell you, one piece of really, really cool software that I love that is underutilized in town is Pix Systems. It's a collaborative hub that brings it's a chance for everyone to come together. That would, you know, like we are now remotely, that can talk about, people can draw on the image or leave notes, or and you can get down to the frame specific things. And it loads fast. There's other, you know, I mean, like instead of making a physical copy of a work in progress, everybody goes on to view how it's going, you know, online. And a lot of them are sloppy. A lot of them are starting to get better, but when you want to talk about a cut, I get a lot of frustrating directors and a lot of frustrating producers because things won't load. But right now, you know, Pix is just killing it, and they have been forever. And there's a lot of there's an array of tools. Nobody knows how to use them. I mean, and I mean, like, not even, I mean, like, they have contracts with people like HBO, and you know, I don't think, you know, a lot of these people just don't know how much they've got at their fingertips.
Yeah. Earlier you were saying that the software is more ahead of than the cameras. They have to. I'm sorry.
You know, usually the camera's driving the software and making it. We're starting to, you know, shoot more in, you know, in a full sensor, like on 5K or 6K, even though it's going to deliver at 4K. So it's kind of like, just how do you work with it, and how do you wrangle it, and then how do you move it around the world?
Okay. Big Love for your first show for HBO?
Yeah, Big Love was a really neat experience. And that was one that you talked about, me being on set and being able to be on set. That one, sometimes my edit room would become set and I would have to step away because the production was so close to editorial that I would show up to work, or I would be going home for the night, and I'd round a corner and Bill Paxton would run right smack into me, and he'd be like, "Are you down?" And he'd be like, come to my trailer, we're having a beer. And talk, you know, we would, you know, we would really get to know each other, and we were really able to talk about character a lot and talk about filmmaking, and how much he liked Jim Cameron and what he really thought of Jim Cameron, and what he meant to the industry. You know, Paxton was this guy that everybody in town knows. He knew everyone. He remembered everyone's name. He was from a real golden era that is starting to disappear. He had a lot of integrity as a filmmaker. And I felt that being on Big Love, and he wasn't the only one either. You know, it was the whole cast.
Sure.
It was all it was not, and it wasn't even just the principals. You know, it was like Harry Dean,
Yeah.
who would spark up conversation. You know, and he'd sometimes catch me on my heels. And he was a pro, but not only those two, I mean, we were, it was Gene Triplehorn and Chloe, and a lot of careers, Aaron Paul started his, it was one of his earlier roles, and all of a sudden we were kind of like sitting around on a daily basis having lunch with them. Sometimes I'd be like, okay, I got a lot of work to do, and I've just eaten, and I'm gonna go back to my room. And then Bill would walk up to me and he'd be like, "Hey, are you taking off?" And I'd be like, "You know what? I'm not. I'm sitting here." And it would be fun to keep him company. And we would. It was a really, really, really. It was a privilege to gain a lot of experience. Things that now that he's gone, he passed along a lot of experiences. And it was really really neat, because I've not met one other person in town that didn't know Bill Paxton or didn't work with him, and they felt the same admiration about him, because he would just remember you. He was like a Hollywood star, but he would remember your name, and he would know all about you. And it wasn't like he would hide or anything. And so I mean, like, just he knew a lot of people, and he made, because he had started out as a crew member. He had started out in the art department, and one day he told me how he and Sissy Spacek were in art departments and on film, and they went back to Texas for a while, and then they came back out to and they became actors, and they put in their work, and they paid their dues, and they had really nice careers. Well, Sissy was on Big Love too, and she's still having, I mean, still ongoing. But it was I think because they had been crew members themselves before they were actors.
Yeah, they knew the struggle.
Yeah, so they knew how hard crews work, and how hard people how they give their time and so much effort.
Yeah, what's really interesting is I don't know if you know a podcast, Blockbuster, but they're on season 2 now, and they're talking all about Cameron's career. I think the first and second episode, they talked all about Bill Paxton and how him and Cameron met, and how he was a crew member. He just started. Cameron hired him on the spot, and we met Bill Paxton once very briefly years ago for like maybe 5 minutes or so. And just those 5 minutes, you could tell what a big heart he had. He was genuinely nice. He wasn't putting up of a fake facade. He was genuinely nice and cared about people. Very surreal. But yeah, the podcast is great. It's going through Cameron's entire career, from working with Roger Corman. And
I'll have to check out that podcast. I'll have to check out Blockbuster then.
Yeah, it's really good there. It's run by they do a score the movie. I don't know if you've heard that. It's a documentary about film scores. It's from the people of that and Score the podcast, and then they have Blockbuster. Last season was all about George Lucas and Spielberg, and really well produced. As were you were acted as an associate producer on Big Love as well?
Yes.
How did you manage that between being an associate producer and an editor? Did they ever conflict, or?
Yeah, it made my day a lot longer. Now it seems like I'm doing a lot of those. I'm acting as a producer more and more, often but at that time, they relied on me a little bit, and I just put in a little extra effort seeing things through to the end, sometimes on the mixing stage. And working with the composers. We worked with Anton Senko, a really, really great composer,
Yeah.
who's just a blast to be collaborative with, and um, some really, really neat music. So I was, helping out with sometimes more than just my episodes, on the music side to help guide things, or on the mix stage, um, to bring a little more, to it. It's a fabulous show.
Yeah.
Big Love's got it's something that is it's holding up. It's really on the tip of everyone's tongue now. Or just the kinds of things that what Big Love is about is
Yeah, we started rewatching it a couple weeks ago, and as you said, it does hold up. You mentioned about music, working with Aaron Zigman, and so Paul and I, we're huge film score fans. We have like over 600 film scores that we collect on various platforms. Did you grow up loving film music?
Oh yeah, sometimes I would go to sleep listening to it. I actually do remember listening to some scores over and over on repeat, and I got to understand how music would serve a character, how it would underscore something, it would tell you something was important, or hold back and create a story and the process. So yeah, I did, actually, I think one that really stuck out at the time was Glory.
Mm-hmm.
That score was exciting to me. I'm trying to think of some that still hold up more than others. I'm trying to think of some that I try to use even today, because sometimes you'll hear when I'm watching a scene,
Yeah,
I'll hear the music while I'm watching the actor work.
well, we're reaching about the end of our discussion here. Do you, last couple questions, do you have any future projects you can talk about?
Trying to hang in there during this pandemic,
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know what's going on. Yeah, I think a lot of people are looking at each other and shrugging.
Yeah,
So
yeah, that's the way it's been since this happened. So many, it's drastically changed. So many projects that were started had to quit, had to put on hold. As you mentioned earlier, our friend Tyler, he moved from California to Georgia thinking he would start working more, because Atlanta is a pretty hot spot with Walking Dead and so forth for his kind of work. And hasn't been finding anything the last 6 months or so. And so they're thinking of maybe moving up to Canada and starting something up there. But yeah, it's definitely hit a hard blow on Hollywood.
oh my gosh, I'm playing poker with a group of some editors, actually on Zoom. During this time, my friend Karsten Karpanik, he edited Kickboxer, and he just put out a blast, and he said, you know what, during this time, why don't we play poker? And so and I know a lot of groups are doing that, and it's a chance for us to come together once in a while, and it's a way to connect and be social, and see each other on our computer screens, and play some cards and try to cut, because everybody, and we catch up on what news we've heard, or we catch up on how the negotiations are going, or what kind of chances we have, what the future, holds for us. And, but yeah, a bunch of us it's a group of editors, so it's kind of our support group at the same time.
Yeah, yeah. Well, do you have any advice for upcoming editors or filmmakers that you can give?
You know, I have lots of advice.
Pick your top two.
I have it's my number one thing is that life is long, and to hang in there. You'll get your chance sooner or later by putting in the time. It's really, really cool how many people are excited about editing now, more than I've ever seen.
Oh yeah.
And you know, with the software that we're kind of talking about, you know, software is so powerful and it's easy, it's accessible. We can edit things on our phone now, and so, you know, and a lot of students know this, you know, that we have a camera in our hands.
Yeah.
We've got an amazing box now, and that is your film right there. So just use it.
Yeah, and a lot of it's free too.
It's crazy. I mean, like, because I want to, I don't mean to sound silly, but the kids have got it so well these days.
Yeah, yeah.
Like this, man, it was like such a chore to just shoot something, you know. I mean, I started out chaining two VCRs together and trying to time things with a cassette player and pressing all at the same time and get things like with a workup speed. So just the tools that we have are in our own pocket, and you know, the phone with, you know, these smartphones with cameras, and like you said, with the apps that are out there, you know, and then you can share them and you can collaborate with them, you know, from your phone, and you can get responses and you can workshop those things, you know, on computer. So
yeah, we did this same thing when we were younger. We you know, like the VCR was our best friend, the pause button, chop editing. And today it's, I mean, even 5-10 years ago, you didn't think this stuff was going to be possible. It's incredible where technology has brought us.
Great. The kids have it so great, man.
Is there any words of advice that someone gave you that helped you?
I can't, now they've all gone out of my head. Oh yeah, there are. I mean, like, yeah, there are some that I still, you know, some of those early tidbits, you know, I've probably used a couple of them today. But you know, I think a really, really great one is shorter is better. So I always work, you know, because 95% of the time shorter is better.
Yeah.
That's something someone told me, so yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, well, it was great talking to you.
Thank you. I'm going to go back to work now.
Okay.
I'm going to try to get going.
We'll talk to you later. Bye.
All right. Yeah.